Good morning. And welcome to the Mayor's Town Hall discussion with you, our future, here in the city of Newark. My name is Robert Gregory. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of the High School Network. If you are here for a reason. You were chosen because you are a part of a leadership organization in your school. You were chosen because your voices matter, and we want to hear them. You were also chosen because we believe, as we pave our path towards local control in this city, that our students' voices matter and that you need to be at the table. We have a mayor who has been a student leader and a leader in all shapes and forms since his birth. He values your input, as do we as a city and a school district. We have several entities represented today. At this point, I would like to introduce someone who plays a very integral role in coordinating all events for high school students and elementary students in the city of Newark. She is our mayor's chief educational advisor, or officer, sorry. She has over 35 years of experience working in the Newark Public Schools. She was our former advisory board president, and she is a humongous advocate for students and for people here in the city of Newark. I want you all to understand one important thing. This is the start of something bigger, and we will be calling on you in a structured manner next year so that we can do what's right for you. This work can't be done without people like Miss Antoinette Baskerville-Richardson. I want to publicly thank you for all of the support you've provided us as a school system, and of course, our honorable mayor. So please join me in giving her a round of applause.
Thank you, Mr. Gregory. So thank you all for taking the time to come here today. You certainly could have been at the beach or, somewhere else. I know how it is at this time of the year. So thank you in your role as student leaders for feeling that it was important enough to come here today. And it is not every day that youth get to meet with the mayor. It is not every town or every city that has a mayor that is interested in speaking to youth. We see this day as the start of really constructively and in an organized way, not just listening to the youth, to the voices of youth, but incorporating the voices of youth in the changes that go on in our city, particularly in education, but also in other issues that involve youth. You got two pieces of paper today as you came in. One was a fact sheet just to give you some background information about local control, kind of what's going on with it, what the steps are that it's going to take for us to get full local control of our schools back. I know, you hear this and that. We've been under local control for over 20 years. We are now in the process very rapidly of moving back to where we here in Newark and our local school board will again have control of what happens in our schools. So there's also another paper that we'd like you to take home to your parents, and you also are invited to come Monday evening, food at 5:30, event opening at 6 o'clock at First Avenue School, but it's for the whole city to continue talking about local control, how community can and should be involved. There will also be youth voice participants there, and we need you to come. So on that note, I am going to first, I want to take a second. I want to thank my staff who was here, helped organize this, handing out the literature to you guys as you came in, as well as this Alexis Trustee and Shakira McKnight, who you will hear from, and the youth ambassadors, which is the mayor's youth leadership group. Thank everyone for helping to make this day possible. We know that there are a number of students here from a number of organizations and schools, and we just want to say that this is, in a sense, a unity day to see what we can all do together for education. So I would like to ask the Youth Ambassador Advisors, Ms. Shakira McKnight and Josiah Hall, to please come up. Thank you.
Good morning, beautiful young people. My name is Shakira McKnight, and I am the advisor of the Newark Youth Ambassadors. And we are youth representatives for the mayor in the city of Newark, New Jersey. And we ask all of you to come down to the Newark Youth Office, which is at City Hall. Mayor Baraka gave us the opportunity to have a space where we can think and make solutions to the problems that we see in our community. So we hear local control, local control, local control. But today we want to give you the importance of local control and what you can do to make a change in your community as far as your schools. So I'm happy that all of you leaders are here today, and I hope that you hear something tremendous from our mayor, which I know that you will. And at this point, I would like to bring forth our Honorable Mayor, Rajni Baraka.
So I just want to reiterate some of the things that Shakira said. I want to invite you to come down to City Hall and be a part of the Youth Ambassadors. It doesn't mean that you have to relinquish your relationship in any other organization you have. It just means that we want you to bring your expertise from what you're doing wherever you are down to City Hall to help us organize other young people in the city and make sure we have a good contingent of young folks that are leaders in our community. We also, every third Saturday of the month, have a leadership development class specifically for young people. We do it at King's Restaurant on Clinton Avenue every third Saturday of the month at 10 a.m. This Saturday we're going to be outside. I know the Genius has started that, but we're going to be outside in the heat this Saturday at 10 on Bergen Street. So everybody's welcome to participate and be a part of what's happening because I don't want people to say that we do not have opportunity for young people to lead in our city. In fact, that's what we want. We want you to lead. And I approached them and asked them to have this town hall. And I approached, Tony Baskerville Richardson and Alexis and Shakira about how do we create a youth town hall around local control, because we're having all of these meetings around local control and we have not spoke to the actual constituents who are going to be affected the most by the transition and the transformation of what's happening in the school system, and that's the young people, right? There's a lot of decisions that are being made. There's a lot of decisions being made by individuals who have their own personal, kind of agenda of what they want to do and why they want to do it, and it serves their specific interests for the most part. No matter what group of people you're talking about, they have their own specific interests and they're fighting for that interest. And sometimes they organize young people to fight for the interests of the specific things that the adults have in their mind. And so what we fail to do is begin to have genuine and sincere, legitimate conversations with young folks about what their interests are, what their specific interests are, and how do we galvanize and organize those interests. Look, I was a student in Newark Public Schools. I was born and raised here. I went to Madison Avenue School, went to Clinton Place Junior High School, that no longer exists. It's now University High. I went to University High. I graduated from University High. When I first went to university, it was on James Street. We had holes in the wall. I could talk to my friends through the hole in the wall. I could shake their hand. I mean, literally big holes in the wall. I could shake their hand like that. I took 2 buses to go down there on James Street from Clinton Avenue and 10th Street, right, in order to get to school in the morning on time. I was ecstatic when it moved to Clinton Place, which is now University High School. Used to be my old middle school. I graduated from there. I went to university from the 7th grade to the 12th grade. I was a little tired of university by the 10th grade, but I graduated from there, and I thank God for my parents who gave me the opportunity to actually attend university in some points against my own will, but I'm happy that it happened because it benefited me tremendously. I became a teacher in Newark Public Schools. When it was very shortly when I was a teacher, a few years later, a young lady named Beverly Hall, who was appointed by the state, came and they invited us all to a central location and told us, you are now under the jurisdiction of the state, right? I felt like we were being annexed, right? That somebody was taking us over. And initially that was only supposed to exist for 5 years, right? But it has been in place, as Tony laid out, for over 20 years. Over 20 years, we have been under the auspices of the state, right? 20 years. Because they allegedly were supposed to improve the school system in all of its ways. Then they judge us, like they give us this kind of scorecard on how the district is doing. But the irony of that is they're in charge. So they really should be judging themselves on how the district is doing because they're running it, right? And if we're not doing well, it's because they haven't managed us well. If things are happening that is not supposed to happen, it's because their leadership has guided us in that direction. And so we've been fighting desperately for a number of years to return back to local control. What does that mean? It means that your mother and your father and you now have the kind of ultimate say-so over what happens in your own school district, right? The contracts, the hiring, the curriculum, the folks that we bring on as consultants, the direction that goes on, the after-school programming, the type of people that's in your school system. Everything from school lunch to AP classes are going to be organized, led, and directed by the residents of this town, right? How you go to school, how you register for school, what schools actually exist. All of these things become under your control, right, as opposed to somebody else's control. Now, that was always important for me. When I took office, I became laser-like focused, relentlessly focused on local control. That means all this other stuff that was going on, people wanted to be involved in that, wanted me to be interested in that, wanted me to speak out about that. But I made a concerted and deliberate effort not to become distracted by all of the stuff that was going on and be focused on having control, or as my father would say, self-determination, to be able to determine the destiny of my own schools and my own city and the lives of my own children, as they do in any other municipality in the state of New Jersey. This is what I was focused on. And, because of the work that we've done collectively, in the grace of God, we are poised to get local control returned to us definitely during the next school year. So what we have to be, and why I began having these meetings, because we have to be clear that when local control comes to us, then we become the problem, right? And it's different. It's easy to protest other people, and it becomes a little difficult to protest yourself, right? And now you have to figure out how to do this thing the right way. And what I'm afraid of is that for 20 years, our community has been so used to playing defense, to use a sports analogy, that we have forgotten, or we don't have any plays for offense. So because we've been trying to get the ball in our possession for so long, all of our plays have been designed to get the ball, to intercept the ball, to create fumbles, to steal the ball, to do all these other kind of things. And we've been very good at disrupting the progress or disrupting things so we can get the ball in our hand. Now that the ball is coming to us, we have to create plays where we score, where we march down the field. And we have to do this immediately because we're talking about local control. We're going to go to sleep and wake up, and it's going to be upon us. Right? Then we have to figure out all manners of things. We have to figure out superintendents, people in charge of curriculum, contracts, who we hire, who we fire, what you're learning in class, what credits are like, what your school day looks like, what we emphasize, what we focus, how to make you successful, right? And so the fight has always been about things that are way up here, and we very rarely talk about what happens in the classroom. That's where you come in. What happens in your cafeteria? What happens in your hallway? What happens when the school day is over? What opportunities do you have to go to college, right? What's mandatory for you to learn and what's not? Should we test you in this and should we test you in that? All of the things that are actually going to make your life better. But we, the adults have been arguing vociferously, crazy about a lot of issues. Some of them important, some of them, whatever. But they're way up here. But we have not had a discussion, honestly, about how your life is going to change once we get local control. What does that mean that we have control now? How is that going to change your life in the immediate sense? And some of us are probably not even clear on how to get that done, and that's because we have not talked to the people who actually who are going to be affected by this the most. So we have not had a conversation with you about what's happening in your classroom, about what's happening in the cafeteria, what's happening after school, what do you need, what's missing, what do you think should happen. As a result of that, I just, before I walked in here, I spoke to Mr. Gregory, and he informed me, and I agree, and we're going to help, that we need a advisory kind of council of young people who are going to advise us through this process, this transition around local control. I think that is tremendously important, that we have young people's input on what the transition to local control looks like, because this thing is going to happen so fast, y'all. You are not going to be aware or tell the difference between the state controlling it and us controlling it, and to me that's a problem. You should be able to tell the difference between the state and your own neighbors controlling the school district, and we want to make sure that happens. How many people know that we have to have an election in order for us to get full control of the school board? How many people knew that we have to have an election? Oh, okay, that's good. Before the paper. That's good. It was on the paper, right? So at the end of that was good. At the end of the day, so in a couple of months, very soon, the state is going to come back and say that the district has governance. That's the final piece of what they need. That is going to trigger a transition. Many things are going to happen in that time period. They're going to be looking for a superintendent. They're going to be trying to rearrange leadership down in the central office. At the next election, either in April or May of 2018, there's a school board election in April. There's a city election in May. And the leadership around the city are going to have to decide which election they think is probably more appropriate for the residents to decide what kind of school board do you want. You have to decide whether you want an elected school board, an appointed school board. I am in support of an elected school board, right? So if the residents agree that we're going to have an elected school board, they go out and vote for an elected school board formula. That happens. After that vote, then officially, we have control over the schools, officially. The minute that vote is tallied and taken, that's the way the law works, right? It happens immediately. So, so if you count from today up until May, June, that's the amount of time that we have to get our act together, which is very short period of time. So we need people to be very urgent, very brilliant, very creative, very imaginative, and we got to talk to everybody. Everybody that lives here and works here is a part of this thing. We have to talk to everybody. There's nobody we can say that we have the luxury of not talking to. We have to talk to everybody, whether we agree with them or not. We have to talk to everybody and hear everybody's point of view. And I've always been of the mindset, if you discover fire, then share it. So if you have the best idea, then you should not be worried about arguing or presenting that idea in a room full of non-believers. Right? So at the end of the day, we're going to have those sessions where we have democratic discourse without that are civil but passionate about the things that we want and how we want to transform this city in a way that it benefits all of our children, all of them, right? Not just the few we like, but all of them. Can we, so I'm gonna, at this point, open up the floor for questions.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Kwawi Garman. I'm interning with the prosecutor's office right now. The question I have is, I guess you would call them proponents of state control will argue that it's more money to the district when the state is in control. One, how factual is that? And two, if that is the case, what can we do as a community in order to put more funds into the school system?
Well, it's actually not true. So the funding is established through law, and the legislators decide ultimately how funding happens in districts. Because of Abbott versus Burke, the school funding formula already exists. It has never been funded to its full extent, and that's with the state in charge, right? So the state has never funded Abbott or funded our schools to the levels that the law says it has to be funded at. So they've been breaking the law for 20 years, right? So at the end of the day, so it doesn't matter who's in charge. So if they're telling you that, that's misinformation, right? So they just came yesterday with a tentative kind of agreement of school funding around the state, which is going to be very contentious because we fund in the state of New Jersey schools through property tax. And districts who have a less property tax base have less resources to fund their schools. And so Abbott versus Burke stated that the state had to, the court stated that they had to supplement that funding through aid. And so Newark gets supplemental funding because we don't have a high base in terms of property taxes. The only way that we can get the state to fully fund or fund us the way we need is that we have to organize ourselves and put pressure on our legislators, on the state legislators, the assembly, the state senators, and the governor, whoever that person is, because they ultimately got to sign, veto, or sign it into law to allow us to get the funding that we deserve and demand that they follow what the Abbott ruling states, that they have to fund the schools at a particular rate that they have not done. That takes activism. And sometimes we are arguing with each other so much that our real enemy get away. Yes, sir. And you can make statements too. You don't have to have a question.
I heard from my guidance counselor that like 10 to 15 students from each school had came, but do you believe that's like a fair sample size? Because you said that you need to get the voice of everyone, and I feel like with the guidance counselors being in the schools, they may just pick kids that they felt like, oh, I know this kid is going to be, like he may say something or he's not going to be talking or messing around.
You probably know that better than I about what's happening in your school and your guidance counselors, what you think they would do. I do believe that we should talk to a larger amount of students and that we should do this several times so that we can get opportunities to do that. But more importantly, I think that we should use this as an opportunity to establish leadership so that you can create opportunities where you begin to organize larger groups of students and get an audience with me or other folks to come and address you the same way I'm addressing this now. So you can't just rely on the adults in your life to organize you in the way that you see, that you think is necessary for you to be organized, right? So, and that's usually what happens. We're a part of a bunch of organizations, and I was like that when I was a kid, but I also was a part of my own organization that I started with groups of kids of my own peers, and we organized things in a way that we thought was important for us. And I would say that you should do the same thing.
Good morning, Troy Dortch, intern for the prosecutor's office as well. One question I have is the administration has been adamant about bringing new teachers in to teach in the school district. So I wanted to ask you, if you guys do regain local control, what are the incentives that you guys are going to provide for the teachers to get more young teachers involved into the school district and to come, like, especially because contracts for teachers has been a big issue throughout the state in many school districts?
Well, I think ultimately that's an issue that the new leadership has to contend with is how do you create incentives around bonuses or other kind of things that's necessary to attract young teachers. One, we just have to destroy the narrative of what happens in the city as well. Like, you know, the idea that our schools are not progressing, that our kids are not intelligent or bright, that our schools are not great places to be. So we have to destroy that narrative, which discourages a lot of folks from wanting to be a part of what's going on here in the city of Newark. They don't know us. We have been characterized in a way that has actually been detrimental to the growth of our city. And we have to get our voices out and our faces out and become real leaders in here to show the rest of the state and the country what's actually happening here in our city and the diversity of young people that we have. That's the other side of it. But the leadership does have to come up with and incentivize things.
I wanted to know what things. Yeah, so I wanted to know what things in particular was the new control going to do, or like what plans do you have in play? So are there things that you want to tackle specifically, and what do you plan to do so?
So let me just tell you that I'm not in charge of the schools. So let's get that clear, right? So it's not that we having these meetings not so I can tell you what I'm going to do, it's so we can talk about what we're going to do, right? I'm not going to be the superintendent. I'm not going to be in charge of the curriculum. I'm not even in charge of who you bring in, who got your lunch contract. I'm not in charge of any of that. What I am, though, is the mayor of the city, and I have influence over what's happening around here, and I'm going to help effectuate change in a way that I think is important, right? So all of what we're trying to do is get you to come up with your ideas, your issues, in terms of what you think should happen, not what I think should happen. Because I could give a whole speech about what I think should happen in the school district, right? As the mayor of the city, I can go on and on and on, but this is not that forum. And right now, it's not important of what I want to do. It's important what you want to do and what you think should happen. And you have people here who have position that can make what you think should happen actually take place. So this is the opportunity for you to get that done, right? And I just told you I don't support appointed school boards. So whoever's elected as the school board and the school board president is going to have more direct and immediate control over what happens in the school district than I am as the mayor.
Hi, good morning. My name is Angel. I'm a student representative for Science Park, where you guys are now. I have a statement and a question, actually. So over the past couple of years, there's been like an uptick in the construction of charter schools within the Newark area and funding as well for them rather than Newark public schools entirely. And over the past half an hour or so, we've been talking about local control within the Newark public school entirely. So my question is, will both charter and public schools be under local control? And if so, will we have the same representatives?
When you say representatives, what do you mean at the end? What do you mean by that?
Just representatives as in, will they represent both us and charter schools, Newark public schools and charter schools?
Well, that's a great question, as a matter of fact. And you're absolutely correct. When we talk about local control, it is everybody. Everybody in the city, everybody in this town, who's every kid in this community, right, that goes to a school, we have to have some level of control over what's going on in those schools, how they affect each other, right? We have to have some say-so, some voice in all of that, right? And that's important. And as the mayor, or even as you as a resident, you should feel like all kids need to be successful wherever they're sitting down at, right? Wherever they're sitting at, they all need to be successful. And so our plan should incorporate everybody. As it relates to funding, we need to sit down, so there need to be some smart people in the room. Adults have not been able to figure this out. So the adults have not been able to get in the room and talk about, honestly, the problems with expansion, rapid expansion, the effect financially on traditional schools, how to share funding, how to talk about equity, talk about curriculum in a way that it benefits everybody in the city. We just have not been able to do it. We have other motives and ideas in our head, and I think ultimately we're going to need the young people in this town from both charter and traditional schools to come together and figure this out. Because I'm going to tell you, there are parents in Newark that do not want to be in a fight that a lot of adults have because they got kids in both schools, right? I mean, they got kids everywhere. And you know, they have decided to disappear from that argument. And so young people are going to have to raise it in a way, right, that's honest and transparent, right? That's honest. That we can't have this narrative that all traditional schools are terrible. That's a lie. It's just a lie, right? That all of the kids in the traditional schools are not learning. That's a lie, right? It's also a lie, right? That the teachers in the traditional schools aren't teaching. That is also a lie, right? So we have to address that and throw that out the window. Then we have to address the fact that every a school that is not related to a traditional school, that's a charter school, is just perfect and excellent. That's not true, right? So we have to have an honest discussion about what's happening. And then we have the honest discussion about our resources. What do we have the money to do in the city of Newark? And we have to go to the state together and say, this is what we need in order to function as a city. But we're going to have that discussion, honestly, upfront, transparent, in a civil way. And I want to tell you that most of the adults in this town have not been able to do that. Go ahead. Just stand up.
All right. So you said during your opening that we need an advisory council of young people during the transition to local control. So first of all, I'd like to make a statement. I think that we need that sort of council to be present throughout all the time that we have local control, not just during the transition. And I would just like to make that clear. I feel like that's a common thing that I've heard when speaking to students, is that needs to be a consistent thing rather than a temporary thing. And then the next thing I think we should do is sort of maybe change the discussion a little bit, and sort of talk about, like, we have a bunch of students here, so this is like a prototype for that sort of council.
Right.
We should talk about, like, what does this council possibly look like? Like, who, what, when, where, why, how? Like, what can we do to actually bring this into reality? And, like, what are the problems that kids in this room are currently facing that we can even start to think about over the summer as we move to local control? And maybe we could, like, I think just maybe some more specific direction would help people to speak up more, because we've got a bunch of kids, but only like 3 or 4 that want to speak.
Right. Well, ultimately, I've told, as I spoke, I told you that we are waiting for you to tell us what you need, right? I'm not going to beat you to make you say what you need to say, but you have to talk about what's happening in your school, what's happening, or the way you think local control should happen for yourself. That's what we need to talk about. Ultimately, in terms of the weeds of how an advisory council look, I think that's another meeting that we need to sit down and talk about how that looks. Because you're getting into the weeds of it. I think I would agree that if there's a way to make it permanent, we should. I don't disagree with that at all. But I also think that that's something that we have to pull some people together about and just specifically talk about that because we don't have a lot of time. But I do hope that young people in here begin to feel comfortable enough to talk about the issues that they're facing and things that they think should change. Yes.
Hi. I'm hearing you say, you know, we have to be leaders and create our own organization. I am part of class, like president and vice president and stuff. We do have organizations to help our peers and even younger ones. University have 7, 8, you know, I know other schools has it too. We do have talks with them, like, we got to do this, we have to do that. We have to, you know, show people that traditional schools aren't as bad as they seem. Our test scores drop. We need to be better at this. It's more than just talking to them. We can sit down with them in an auditorium and talk to them for hours. That's really not going to do, it's going to get to like maybe like 1 out of 100 people. You know, it's really not going to do nothing. I sit down with 7th graders as secretary of class of 2018. I know my vice president sit down with the 8th graders, and we talk and we tell them, we tutor. We have tutoring classes. We have sisters to sisters. We have brothers to misters to not just talk about personal issues, but school issues. We see like these little kids just arguing and stuff. We have advice groups. We have organizations, not just ran by adults or parents, but younger seniors and juniors creating own organizations to help. that's really not gonna, we need something bigger than just sitting down with older elders trying to, you know, I guess trying to get through to their heads. Like, younger people just have their own mindset. And we do have to talk to more than just, 50, 75 people. Like, schools by school, talking to people, we have to really just do something about it, not just sit down and talk. Action speaks louder than words.
I agree, but I would say, I agree with you, but it's always going to be, there's always going to be a small group of people that are going to be the vanguard for most of the things that are happening. There's always going to be a small group of people that leads and pushes it. But I don't want us by any stretch of the imagination to disregard your efforts of talking and because talking is a part of educating people. You have to educate people. You have to give them the ideas, the issues, because you do not want people to act on misinformation. You do not want people to act without any information. You need to make sure that people have clear information, that they have a clear direction, a clear goal. You have to do that. You can't have labor without theory or practice without theory. You have to talk. You have to educate each other. You have to think, then you act, right? Because if you're just acting, you have a lot of people that are following and doing things, and they don't know why they're doing it. So you got a lot of walkouts of buildings, and you got people walking out with you who don't support any of the things that you support. They're just walking out because they want to walk out. And that's part of the problem, is because we have not educated them. We have not talked to them about the real issues of what's going on. And you have to do that. There's monotonous, it's boring, it's long, but it has to take place. It has to take place. They picking up people, so.
Good afternoon. My name is Jay Sean Pearson. I'm from Malcolm X Shabazz. I was asking, there's a new construction around the city. How does that affect school funding, opening and closing of schools? How would the new construction help us?
That's a great, great question. So that's something that's debated on the state right now. Part of the problem is a lot of the construction that's happening get what's known as an abatement, right? And in an abatement, the cities get more money than they normally would when people pay the full taxes, because it'll take me an hour to explain it. Everything is split up. The county gets some, the state gets some, the city gets some, and the school board gets some of that money, right? When you have an abatement, the school is taken out of that. So when you're having a pilot, there is no payment for schools. So while development is going up, it does not have a direct correlation to the resources that go into the school system, right? Which is why places like Jersey City and Hoboken, though their tax bases change, it does not translate necessarily to more money for their schools. So that's why they're fighting still for school funding. And the state is saying they shouldn't be on it because there's a different city than it was before. So what we're trying to do is figure out now how to put the schools back in those pilots by saying, if you get an abatement, you also have to pay a portion of that money to schools, or create direct streams of money that goes just to the schools and nowhere else. So suppose we say we're going to develop the port on Doremus Avenue. We're going to do all that. We can pass a local ordinance that says all of the revenue from this project goes directly to the school system, right? So we have to begin doing that so that the development in the city is not counterintuitive to the development of the school system. But that is exactly what's happening. So these buildings are going up, it's fancy. If they get an abatement, that means no money is coming to the schools. Now, not all buildings are getting abatements, but a lot of them are. So that's a great question.
Good morning. My questions or / statement will address the last 2 points on the third section of your paper. You said the plans address outdated facilities. There is...
I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Okay, sorry. You said the plan to address outdated facilities. There's a lot of facilities like that in Newark. How possible or how feasible is the plan to address it, and how soon is it going to happen? And my second question or part is a transparent transition process. If you want young people to be involved in the transition process, you have to be totally and brutally honest with them. That means if something is going wrong, you have to tell them something is going wrong. So if you're putting us in this process, you have to be truthful with us. And if, no offense, if you guys, or if you guys are not ready to give that to us, then I don't know if it's going to be easy to move on.
So I don't know where that part comes from, us being honest or truthful, because you must have been talking to some other people. You haven't been talking to me. And I have no problem with being honest or transparent at all, zero.
I want to give an example.
Right.
If you plan to tell us if there's a problem going on, like there's not enough funds, you need to let us know there's not enough funds, not tell us, oh, we'll talk about it later. We need to know what's going on.
Right. Oh, absolutely. If somebody asks me about the funds, I'll say that. So the first part of this is, like, the reason we even having this discussion is so you can let us know, and that we can be honest and transparent, so you can let us know what you want, right? So we have to get rid of all cynicism, because cynicism is the enemy of change. So if you already think that nothing is going to happen, nothing is going to happen, right? I've been an activist and an organizer since I was 16 years old. I've never gotten into something thinking that nothing was ever going to happen. The fact that I'm meeting with you means that something is going to happen. And because I'm present and you're present, that by itself means that you should make sure that something is going to happen. Because you can't be a leader if you believe that, if you don't have any hope, right? So if you think that nothing is going to take place, how are you going to lead people, right? You got to make them believe that something is going to change. And that's why your leadership is important, right? So we're not in here to hide or be secretive. We're here to let you know what's going on. And we never have enough money. I told you from the beginning we never have enough money. The Abbott dish has not been funded fully. It's never been funded fully for the last 20 years. I told you that. And the people that can fund it are at the state, the legislator and the governor. I told you that. So we need to be able to organize and get full funding for our school district. That's important. Yes. Should I pick somebody or? Oh.
Okay, my name is Kanifa Wilson. I'm an intern at the law department. Oh, sorry.
Y'all need to pick some more of these kids, though. But
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay,
Go ahead.
I think what needs to be done is more alumni in the schools helping them, because
Right.
students, they, finish high school and it's like, what else to come? The guidance counselors don't really push them to achieve higher things. So it's like, after high school, what else? So I feel as though it should be more networking with skill enhancement, and the the alumni able to help them move forward with getting internships and getting to college.
I agree.
My name is Isaiah, and I'm on the student council from American History. So one problem in my school is that the school building is falling apart, basically, because the school don't look really good. But from the outside, it does. So can some of that funding go to schools to help remodel or fix them up?
Yes, it should. What I do know is that some of the building sales that have been going on, that money is going to go towards repairing some of the schools. And what was said earlier about the repairing of schools, the state a few years ago, a while ago, allocated about $6 billion for the development of new schools throughout the state of New Jersey, right? That money disappeared. We got some schools, we got this one, we got Central, we have a few other schools that came about, and we're still eking out new schools here and there. We're still putting new schools up, and there's a lot of repairs that need to be done in the school district, and I think that's something that needs to be raised around local control. We have to transition and start talking about schools that need to be repaired, that's in disrepair, and how do we begin to fix them, right? That's important.
Oh, snap.
I'm gonna call you in a minute, man, if they don't come up here, because I'm
Okay. Okay, there's a whole list of problems of things. Oh, by the way, my name is Destiny. I'm from Bard.
How you doing?
Hi. There is a list of things that are wrong with my school, and this is things that I've noticed. I'm now a senior. I've been here for 4 years, and we noticed that our school building is still merged with People's Prep, and don't get me wrong, we want to focus and strive to have a better education, but we can't do that with People's Prep on the side because they're a danger to us. They are loud in the hallways, and we don't always get to focus, and we have built classes next to them. I also want to talk about this lead thing. I mean, our building, you guys aren't really doing anything about the lead in our school. You just gave us water coolers, and that runs out before second period even ends. Oh yeah, you said that there is no funding, but the problem is with the equation. I just wrote an essay on this, so I can.
No, I didn't say there was no funding. So we're just not being funded. It's different. Go
We're
ahead.
not being funded,
Right, yeah,
right, because of the equation that was
Right.
set out, but the equation is based on our graduation rates and the retention rates and something like that. Okay, wait, hold up. Okay.
Okay, I'll address it. Go ahead, finish. I'll address it.
But we don't have, you're saying that we're losing funding based because we don't have funding also in like the taxes from the constructions and stuff. But what about the constructions for other things? Like, I feel like, yeah, never mind.
So let me just, I'm gonna start from the end and go back. So that's why it's important for us to have conversation so that we're clear. And you have to be clear on what's going on, right? So the school funding formula is not based on your graduation rates or your retention rates. Your funding formula is not based on that. It's not. School funding was organized based on property tax, right, in the beginning. Meaning, people who own property, they have to pay taxes. Those taxes go towards the school system. The city raises taxes on the residents. They levy a tax, and your parents or whomever pay for the schools to be funded. If there are very few people who actually own property to pay taxes, then you actually have less money that goes to the school system, right? You put a burden on taxpayers when you raise the taxes, and only a few people are paying taxes for a bunch of people, right? So say you have 1,000 people in the city, and there's only 20 people paying taxes, so the 20 people are actually paying for 1,000 people and their children to be educated. The state said that, the state Supreme Court said that that was unconstitutional and unequal, because there are some cities where there are 1,000 people pay taxes, and obviously they're going to be able to pay more for their schools than a city that only has 100 of them paying taxes, right? And so the courts made the state supplement those cities that have less people paying taxes to equalize the funding so that you'll be able to get a decent education on par with somebody who has 1,000 people paying those same level of taxes. The state Supreme Court told them to do that. The state has never, ever done that. They have paid some supplemental money, but not to the level of what the state Supreme Court told them to do. That's what I'm saying. Does it mean we cannot function? No. We have money to do different things that we need to do. Does it mean that things are still unequal? Yes. It means that there's a level of inequality and inequity that exists because we are not being funded at same rates or in a proportion as other school districts are being funded. The issue about the property taxes was that the gentleman asked a great question, which is all of the development that's happening in the city. The city is experiencing over $2 billion worth of development now. So it's buildings going up, new buildings. He asked, is that going to affect the school system? Will we get money from that? And I answered that it does not mean that you will, because some of these buildings get tax abatements. And a tax abatement means you don't pay full taxes. You pay part of your taxes, the city gets more, but the school system is not in that equation. So the school system gets none, which means that all these buildings that go up doesn't necessarily mean that the money is coming to the school system. And so we have to figure out a way now to organize development in such a way that money goes to the school system when we have these abatements, or we begin to identify projects where all of the money goes to the school system. And that's going to take a local and statewide kind of strategy to figure that out. But that's what I mean. It doesn't mean that we're losing. Well, in essence, we are losing money because some of that money would be in the school system, but it's not. And that's what I'm saying. So that's important. The lead situation is something, you know, I know the school district has been working to shut down the places where you would where you would get lead from and give you water in that instance. I know they've been doing that, and if it's not enough water, I think the folks in the school district can respond and should and help bar any school out and getting the water that they need. But there's a larger strategy that the city has to take on, which does not have anything to do with local control, right? So local control would mean how you handle the water problem in the district, period. The city has to lobby the state to get money to fix old pipes in our ground that have been there for 350 years, right? Lead pipes that go into each building, which means we have to change those pipes, which is going to cost a considerable amount of money, which means that we need state support and help to be able to do that. Because the taxpayers here, if they can't afford to fund the schools at the level, they certainly can't afford to change all of the pipes, right? So we need to be able to and we are, talking to state officials to be able to create a strategy and a plan to get the dollars to help us around the state. And it's just not Newark. So one thing Newark did is when we exposed the problem, other districts realized they had the same problem, right? So now you have many districts around the state who checked their water because Newark's water was a problem and found that they also had lead pipes and they had to change theirs as well. So it's good and bad. It's bad because other people have to deal with what we have to deal with. The only pro to that is that you have allies to help you fight the state in getting a plan to replace these pipes in the schools. Yes.
Hi, I'm Derek Daniels from Barringer Arts and Academy of Humanities. I'm a freshman, and I have to ask, concerning this program and our advisory and activist protocols, will it all be confined in one school, or will we be able to interact with each other, like Barringer interacting with Bard or Science? Is that possible, or?
I think you should, and I can't tell you not to interact with anybody. I think it's possible. I think you should. I think that's the only way that real things are going to happen is if you interact with each other. I think you should interact with not just the traditional schools. I think you should grab a couple of those kids from those charter schools and interact with them too. I think all these kids in this city need to begin interacting around these issues, these social issues, and begin to make some changes in this city.
So like exchanging ideas, like them coming here, us going there?
Absolutely. And I don't think that you should wait to have a venue that's created by us. I think you should begin to create that opportunity yourself. And like the young lady said, begin to have this advisory kind of council that exists in perpetuity. I agree with that.
My question is, by the way, I'm Simi from Barringer High School, Arts and Humanities, and I'm a junior. So my question is, do we, the student body, have a representative talking to the state or debating with the state?
Do you have a representation to do that? No. Your representation is who your parents voted for, and if some of you 18, who you voted for. If you're 18, you should be registered and you should be voting, because those people are your representatives. Do I think that you should have that? Absolutely. I think that there should be student organizations and student representatives or student leaders who lobby the state, who appear at these hearings. They have hearings about school funding, they have hearings about curriculum, they have hearings about park testing, and all this stuff goes on, and I think the young people need greater representation in there, absolutely. Yeah, try to get some new people too who haven't said anything.
My name is Christopher Morera, I'm from Science Park, and looking at many of the issues that most of the schools have, so I've seen that advisory is not really like evident or really emphasized as a way to get more communication going on amongst the students about many of the problems or things that are going on. I know that, like, I've seen that the lead water infrastructure problem, like, it's an issue for most of these schools, and that funding, we don't really know what happens, like when there's a budget cut or something, we don't find out until like maybe we see that our programs are cut. Right. And yeah, that's not how, in my opinion, that's not how it's supposed to be. Right. So like, based off of what Aisha has said before, it's a problem in terms of communication, because we want to know more about what you're doing so that we can be like I phrased it, we may be politically active in our school, but we're not really politically educated sometimes.
It's a good point.
And that's something that I think we can also act upon, so we can know more about the plans for funding, we can be educated on these things and improve the communication amongst, so that transparency can be seen throughout the schools.
So I think we should create a system where that happens. I think that the advisory council is one way. There might be other ways. So when people in here say, I don't think that this is an effective way, the next step is to come up with an idea about what you think is an effective way. So our discussion and communication isn't just about what's wrong, it's also about ideas about how to make it right. So those are two different emotions. We can talk for days about what you think is wrong or why this is not working, but we need imaginative, brave, creative people to say this is what we need to do to make it work, right? So we do need an advisory council. I think the mayor and other elected officials from the governor on down need to address you. You need to call before them and talk to them. And then you have to have opportunities to convene larger bodies of kids, students from around, and have conversation with them about what's going on and what you heard from us, and opportunities where we come speak to them. But you have to do that because everybody is not going to initiate a meeting to come and speak to you. They're not going to do it because they don't have to, because ultimately most of you are not a voting constituent. And unfortunately, that's how things are thought of. So at the end of the day, you have to, I decided to come here. Nobody came down there and protested or dragged me out of City Hall and said, you better meet with these kids. I decided to do this. Everybody's not going to decide to do it. So you need to organize a group of folks that summon these people to you to say, we want to meet with the governor. We want to meet with our state legislator. We want to meet with our councilman. I want to meet with the mayor again and again and again. And then have larger meetings with the constituency, all of the kids, and say, look, we just met with the governor. We just met with the mayor. This is what he said. Get their feedback and begin to push for change. You're right. And I'm willing to give you any information I have, that's lawful for me to give you. I will definitely give you. I don't have any issue with that at all. None.
Hi, so I'm a sophomore at Science Park High School, and recently some student leaders in the school, we came together, we made up our own problems and possible solutions.
Great.
So some of the problems were over-testing, charter school growth, poor teacher retention, and teachers not fully prepared to teach their students. And some solutions we came up with were teacher-made assessments instead of park testing coming from people that don't know what we're learning in classes. Also a moratorium on charters, because just like a lot of the public schools said that their buildings are being shut down, like their buildings are dirty and messed up, but there are 2 new charter schools being built in 2017 and 7 expansions. And there's a new North Star being built in 2018, but there are still schools that are messed up. And there's also better teacher contracts. Yeah.
I like the last part. I just hope that when I meet with the NTU that one of them get up and say, we need to give better curriculum to the kids, right? Because you just fought for their contract, so I hope they're fighting for you the same way. I would agree with most of that stuff that you said, absolutely. And I think that we, and as I said, adults have not been able to figure these things out, and we have to. We have to. We get really territorial and angry about these things, and we're not able to sit in the room like, civilized adults and have a conversation about what's best for our young people. And I think that's why you guys are going to have to intercede and interject immediately, or this conversation is just going to be a conversation, because people have picked a side and they're staying on their sides, and we're just going to throw darts at each other. And I've been trying my desperate best to pull people to the center to have a conversation at least about how we figure this out, right? Because some of these people, folks are not going anywhere. You can't get rid of them. People, your neighbors' kids go to these schools. We have to figure out how to do this in an equitable, in a financially sound way where we're not improving some schools and destroying others, right? We have to figure that out. And I agree with that, and I think the answers to that may come from the people in this room.
I'm Bradley, and I go to a Newark public school. There's something that I want to stress for all of us here, is that each and every one of us, when we got up, we said our school that we go to. But I think there's a problem with us saying what school we go to. And that problem is that it distracts from us being able to cooperate with each other. We need cooperation. If we have local control, then we need to be able to come together as students of Newark Public Schools and work together. There's like many things that like stop us from doing that, such as our uniforms. We begin to be told to identify with our school. If you go to science, then you're identified with somebody that's supposedly smart. We should be identified. Everybody in our Newark Public Schools should be seen as somebody that's smart. We shouldn't be seen as somebody that goes to Science Park High School and is smart, that goes to arts and is talented, or goes to other schools and they're not as good as those two or other schools.
What's your name, sir? What's your name?
Bradley.
Okay.
Also, and I think that standardized tests is also a part of that. And like, we gauge what like level a school is on based off of these standardized tests and our test scores, saying which school is smarter. And I think that'll eventually influence what schools we fund more and that it shouldn't.
I think that should be a video that you just did. We should send it all over the place. You're right on the money. Right on the money. I don't even need to speak to that. I agree with everything you said.
Can we go back to the property taxes? When you said that we don't have enough property taxes going around, couldn't we just draw on from other taxes to help fund our schools?
We could raise taxes in other places or create taxes to go to public schools. We can do that. In the state of New Jersey, we need what's called enabling legislation, right? So it means that the state legislature has to give the local schools, or give the local cities permission to tax the citizens on specific things, right? So we could say we want to create a tax on sugary sodas or sugary items. We can do that, right? But the state has to give us permission, and then we can say all of the money that we raise from taxing sugar will go to the school system. So that is something that we can do. We just have to get permission on the state side to allow us to do that. So that's right on the money.
I'm Jalen. I go to BAR, and I'm an NAACP youth chapter from Newark secretary. My question is, I have two. One, who is responsible for saying where the schools are, like placing the schools? Because back to what Destiny was saying, I don't think it's good that we're in a building with a charter school, even more People's Prep, because they influence what some of our kids do, if that makes sense. Like, our kids see what they do, and they decide they want to try what they do, and People's Prep is a really bad charter school. Like, their kids in there are terrible. And then my second question is, I'm so serious.
That was brutally honest.
I'm so serious.
Go ahead.
They really be cursing out their teachers. They don't care what they say.
That might be more about leadership than it's about the school or the building itself. But go ahead.
And secondly, who is responsible for making rules for Newark Public Schools? Because I know
that's good.
I came from Team Academy, and I went to a Newark Public School, and it's totally different from what I learned from middle school, meaning like the curriculum I was taught, I'm still doing it in 9th grade. Like, I was taking algebra in 8th grade. I'm taking it in algebra in 9th grade. And
it's a great question.
And it's like...
It's a great question. And I want to respond to you. But the reason why I'm saying that's a great question is because we talk about everything. We find a way to talk about everything from contracts to this to that, and we never talk about what you're learning, ever. And that is the reason that all of us are here. That's why all the adults get paid, whether you're in traditional or charter school, is so you can learn. So here's the problem. This is what I want to do. Let's make sure we get new hands, a couple of new hands, because I want to say one last thing to her. But I want to get the new hands in here. I want to make sure that all of you know who's responsible for what. Because sometimes we lump everybody together, and unfortunately, some of the adults in our life don't know who's responsible for what either, the people who we organize with. You have to know who's responsible for what. So sometimes you ask the mayor to do something that's under the purview of the superintendent, or the superintendent to do something that's under the purview of the governor or the state commissioner. You have to know all of these people. You have to know the difference between the council people, difference between your mayor, difference between the superintendent, difference between the governor, difference between the state legislatures. If you're going to be involved in this, you have to know what everybody has the ability to do, so you're knocking on the right door. Because sometimes we protesting at the wrong door. So we protesting at doors for people who cannot fix our problems. We have to make sure we go to the right people to get the right problem addressed, right? Now, it's important that everybody know what your issues are so they can talk about them, but you need to make sure you go to the right person to deal with the problem specifically that you need. Everything that this young lady addressed is the purview of the superintendent, and more importantly, all of the people that are in the leadership under the administration of the superintendent's office, right? So all the people that's in charge of curriculum, all the people that's in charge of everything that you're learning in the schools. But more importantly, the State Board of Education, the state commissioner, they also responsible for everything you learn, the credits you get, the credits you don't get. All of them are responsible for that. And they've never been called to the carpet on what they're actually giving you in classes. They're not called to the carpet on that, and they should be. Who's next? Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Brianna Racine. I attend Malcolm X Shabazz High School. And my question is, once we retrieve local control, what will be the vendor selection process for our school food service?
I know that's right. That's a very specific question that I cannot answer because I don't know. Like I said, as the mayor, I would have no control over who the vendors are, but whoever's elected to your school board will. And those school board meetings and you create an advisory council, you should advocate for vendors that serve the students in a way that you think they should be served.
Hi, once again, I'm Destiny from University High School. There's a really shortage in math teachers.
Yes.
Every year, my school, and I don't know about others, are going through math teachers like crazy. I am going to my peers for tutoring math because my math teacher is very inconsistent in teaching us. So for me to pass a test or even a state test like Park or any other test, I'm not really learning because teachers are very inconsistent and I'm not learning to pass. Learning to learn. I'm learning to pass. And that's not just with math teachers, just with any teachers. I don't know how to explain it, but I'm not really learning. I'm learning how to constantly get the cheat code and how to pass it. I'm not learning for it to stick in my mind. I'm learning to pass a test. And like one of my peers said, we getting tests, state tests, and people not coming in and sitting down and seeing if we really on track, if teachers are really teaching us what we need to be taught. And it's not fair because they'll be doing college applications and they looking at us like, are we really learning anything? And we trying our best, but I'm not being taught to be learning and stick in my mind. I'm being taught just to pass a test for me to succeed in life, and it's not fair.
That's why you need the advisory council, and you need there's always been a shortage of math and science teachers, and we just have to do a better job at making that happen. And then you talked about something deeper, and I do want to say that a lot of our teachers are given a lot of different directives. The state has directives, the Park assessment directives, all of these things, which makes it sometimes complicated for them to figure out what it is that they should be doing in that classroom. And there should be a larger discussion about Park and all these other statewide exams that affect how you learning in school. That's just my personal opinion, and that's something that you guys should be talking about. me take 3 more questions from new people.
Hi, I'm representing Central High School. I'm listening to all the statements, questions, and as a whole community, we all want to know where do we start, and I think we should all like figure out some dates or anything to actually all get together, and probably start like everyone is basically on social media, and like start like a Facebook page or anything, so we could get this thing moving and going on and get our answers that we need and that we want as a community as a whole. Thank you.
Which one?
This young man right here had his hand up from the beginning.
Oh, yeah, come on.
Yeah. And I passed
All right.
over him a bunch of times.
You already spoke, so new folks. Go ahead, sir.
So, good morning. My name is
Morning.
Andre Ferreira. And this local control idea sounds great, obviously the benefits that we're hearing. And this is a perfect first step, us all being here and having this conversation. But how does local control actually solve these problems that we're aware of in the struggles of Newark Public Schools and charter schools? We can speak in this academic space as long as we would like, but how do we solve the inequalities outside this room and ensure that everyone is given a voice? How is local control going to benefit when there is no solution for the poor funding to these issues? You also say we need state support. So how does local control ensure so if we're taking away state control? So I guess I'm speaking for all of us when I say a clarification of local control is necessary if you want us to agree that this transition process is necessary to continue.
Right. So, let's just to clarify first. I'm not here to get you to agree with it. It's getting ready to happen. I just want you to be prepared for it. The local control is self-determination, right? So it does not mean that your problems go away. It does not mean that your problems go away. What it does mean, however, is that you have the right to handle the problems in the way that you think is beneficial to you. That's the difference. So you can have a problem in your household. It does not mean you want your neighbors to come in and control your household. You have the right to be able to decide, which means you have the right to get things wrong. You have the right to fail. You have the right to make a mistake, but you also have the right to correct it yourself. You have the right to have your own people there. You have the right to pick your own superintendent. You have the right to pick the people who govern your school district. You have a right to decide what classes you learn, what classes you go to, what curriculum you learn. You have the right to decide how long the school day is going to be. You have the right to make all of these decisions locally. Your parents have that right. The people in the community have that right. And we should not abdicate our right and give it to other people to govern over us because they're saying they can do a better job than we have, and they have not proven over the past 20 years that they have done a better job than us. We wouldn't be sitting here talking about all these problems that we have, right? So we want to be able to have the right to weigh in and make what we believe actually take place. Right now we could say we want these things, but we don't have any power or any authority to make what we want happen to actually happen. Local control means that we have the ability to say, this is what we want and this is what we're going to do. That's what that means. That's what self-determination is. It gives us explicit control over what's happening in our district. It also makes us more accountable to each other about what's going on and not be able to point the fingers at other individuals. The state, we're still a part of the state. So don't get involved in that argument that because we want local control, it means that the state has no responsibility. That's not true. There are 566 municipalities in the state of New Jersey. Most of them control their own schools. The state is still involved in those schools because Newark is a part of the state. Not only is Newark a part of the state, it's the largest city in the state. So they don't lose their responsibility. We just have more authority over our own lives, and they ought to treat us the way they treat other municipalities that have that control over their own districts as well, right? That's what that means. So it doesn't mean the state has no responsibility. In fact, they have more responsibility to us because we're the largest district, the largest school district, the largest city in this state, and they ought to make sure that everything is happening the way it should happen in Newark. But that also does not mean that you have to tell me what to do, right? That's what local control means. It means have control over your own destiny. And that's what we've been fighting for. Pick somebody.
So my name is Anoshin, and as a local controlled district, I think we should focus on what we learn in class, because the harder we are pushed to learn, the better our leadership skill evolve. And this way, we are creating more leaders and more people like us that are asking questions today. So do you think it's our #1 priority to improve our learning system?
I think that's my #1 priority. I'm an educator by heart. I've been an educator for 22 years in Newark Public Schools. Longer than that if I count my student days, right? So I was a principal, first a substitute, then a teacher, then a vice principal, then a principal. I went through the whole gamut, right? My #1 thing is education, clearly. We talk about all these other issues because I have to, and I think they're important, but the most important thing is what's happening inside the classroom, what you are learning or not learning. That's the most important thing, what you have access to. That's it, that's it. And if we talk about all these other things and not that, then we miss the boat. And the only reason we talk about those things because they have an effect on what's going on inside the classroom, period. That's the only reason that I would talk about them, because they affect what's going on in the classroom. Like the young man said, just because we get local control, it does not magically mean all our problems go away. What it does mean is now you're accountable and responsible for solving your own problems. That's what it means. And so we need smarter, more imaginative, and brave people involved in that process.
So my name is Vivian, and I'm from Barringer High School, Barringer Arts. And and I'm a student representative for YMS too. And the other day, they went to the board meeting and they proposed a student board that was made out of like one student from each and every high school, charter and public. And so they can bring issues from their school and discuss it in the board, and also talk to the student representative in the Board of Education to give them more power over, what happens in the school, and also have a say. Is that something that you will support in your understanding of local control?
So it's two things. At the beginning, we've been talking mostly like this young lady talked about. What's your name? I'm sorry.
Laura Gould. I'm actually the Curtis student representative.
Laura Gould, about this kind of student advisory group. So I think that's important. What I would say is that you do not need the advisory board or anybody else in a city to give you permission to start a youth advisory thing. You don't need me to give you permission to do that. I had an organization called Black Neoforce when I was a kid. Nobody gave me permission to do any of the stuff I did. Nobody, not one person. So I never went to the advisory board, I never went to the mayor, I never went to the council and said, can I start this organization? I never did that. I never thought it was in their purview to give me permission to do anything. If you want an advisory board, make it happen. Then go down there as the advisory board. We are the youth advisory board, and this is what we want. That's what you should do, right? And you can do that in a civil, kind of constructive way when you have the support of the student body and you're recognized as a real group, because the students recognize you. Because in order to be a leader, you have to have followers, right? Because the students recognize you. And if the students recognize you as a formidable and right representative of them, then you have authority, because the students collectively have authority, right? And you don't need their permission. You can ask them, do you agree with it? But you don't need their permission. I gotta go, but go ahead. You're the last.
Hello, my name is Anna Montero. I go to Science Park High School. And after everything that's been said, I have to say that I agree with every problem that's been discussed. And I do think that it's easier said than done, though, and this is a good initiative to get us talking about it, but I also think a lot of people aren't informed enough. I think that there's people upstairs in their classroom completely oblivious that this discussion is going on, and I think that the first step should also be educating and informing everybody, not just the people who are handpicked by their teachers, their counselors. I think that information is really the most important thing for students and for citizens, because they're going to, in the future, elect these representatives we're talking about. And I think local control does give us the autonomy and agency, but I think that all our decisions that we make do need to be informed. So how do you plan on informing citizens and students throughout the transition into local control and during when we are actually in the process of local control, so that people can make informed decisions that actually represent what we want
Absolutely.
to happen.
So we've already started some meetings. So we're having a meeting on Monday with a bunch of constituencies that help organize this, and you're more than welcome to be a part of that at First Avenue School. That Tony, you have the flyer. So we're going to do a series of these meetings throughout. So you should come and advise other people to come and be a part of that. We're going to continue to inform people as much as we possibly can. I have an emergency that they told me about an hour ago that I really have to go. But I want to say that this should be the beginning and not the end. That you guys really should think about and put together this kind of advisory thing that you're talking about, but also create a methodology or a system where you begin to reach out to the larger populations of the schools that exist here. And if you're doing that, beautiful, bravo. You can always, if you need me to come and speak, I will always do that. If you have to let me know in advance, I will do that and address any concerns or issues that you have to help you go through this process of local control. Yes?
I'm sorry, I know you have to go. I just wanted to say, a lot of people have been talking about how students have to sort of start doing things for themselves. I just created a public Facebook group. It's called Newark Students Council. So if you guys are interested in seriously trying to organize, I feel like this would be a good way to start. It's on Facebook. It's a public group. Newark Students Council. Thank you. That's all.
That's right on the money. So some people made some great suggestions. Hopefully you guys follow it, and the next time I come, hopefully it's packed and we're more clear on the issues that we're talking about. Thank you.